Thank you very much, Beth. I'm actually very excited to be here. I'd love to say that I was in Murfreesboro today, but me and my schedule, I am actually in Phoenix, Arizona this week. My best friend's getting married out here, and they're all out at Topgolf right now. So don't feel sorry for me though, because I'm really excited to be here talking to you guys today, because this is something that I'm really passionate about. It's really important to me that we have the tools in Rutherford County to be the brainchild, I think, behind everything that's happening, all the positivity that's happening in the state of Tennessee right now. I love being an unofficial ambassador of Tennessee and Murfreesboro across the country. While I reside in Murfreesboro, my company is based out of Toledo, Ohio, and we have clients across the country that we work with. We have offices across the country that I work with, and it's the common theme is always either, man, I love coming to Tennessee. I love when I come there, the people are so nice. There's so much positivity. Everybody is helpful. Or, man, I wish I could move to Tennessee, right? And I think we all probably hear that very often. And I think that it's important for us to make sure that we're helping our organizations manage the growth here in Rutherford County, because the last thing that I think that we want is for people to have conversations with individuals here and hear that people aren't having good experiences, people or maybe would choose to stop relocating their businesses here because they find out that it's really hard to hire and find talent. And I know that there are challenges in the marketplace related to both COVID and just general, because to be honest, a year ago when the unemployment rate was 3%, people said the same thing. We still have plenty of open jobs and a lot of the challenges remain the same. So we basically just added an extra layer on top with COVID, right? So I think we have an opportunity in Rutherford County because I think we're blue collar first, but I think we have a growing white collar opportunity. And the more that we can set ourselves up as a leader in recruiting and employee retention and engagement, and just show off how great the company's experiences are here, the more likely we are to recruit more white collar companies here as well. So it's a benefit for all if people view Rutherford County as a premier county, not just in the state of Tennessee, but across the country. And I feel that we have that attention on us. And it's, as professionals here in this market, it's really our responsibility to be good stewards of that news and information, because we do have a great state, we have a great county, and we have great people. We've just got to find some different ways to engage the people that are here. So thank you again, Beth, for having me. Thank you, Essence, for helping me with the slides today. Not in my normal office. Normally I've got like 3 screens up. Today I'm just working off of one. So if I end up on mute somehow, just yell at me somehow or another, because I've done something poorly here. So without further ado, I do want to talk about the topic today, which is how marketing, recruiting, and onboarding are killing retention. And I hate to start with a negative there, but the challenges of 2020, while unique, and as I mentioned before, they haven't actually changed what challenges we had in, say, 2019, 2018, and before that. We've had to change processes, right, in the way that we interview people. But generally speaking, here in Middle Tennessee, the problem remains finding quality employees. And I think that, without getting into too much detail, sometimes we put the onus on finding quality employees on the actual candidates themselves. And in my opinion, I believe that employees or employers make great employees. If you have something that people believe in, if you have good leadership that people can relate to, then employees rise to that level. Oftentimes what I see is that we have a challenge, not just here, but in across the country. If people have poor retention, poor attraction and acquisition strategies, it's typically not due to the candidates. It's actually due to the leadership and the structure that you have in place. So today we're going to discuss what you can do to improve those processes, but we're also going to talk about how we can create quality employees and create a workplace that's enjoyable to work in where employees feel rewarded. Additionally, we're going to discuss how to differentiate your organization here in Rutherford County, because like I said, it's a blue-collar county. We have a lot of manufacturing, we have a lot of supply chain and distribution, and to be honest, there's not a lot of variation in what it means to build a widget for this company versus moving that widget for this company, right? And so we've got to find a way to help you all differentiate who you are. We're gonna discuss creating a positive candidate experience, because in my mind, the way that you treat people is one of the most valuable assets that you have, and it's a complete controllable item in the process. So we're going to also speak on a very low level about how to find your way to the top of Google and search engine optimization, and we're going to talk to a little bit higher level on how to leverage social media in your local market. So most importantly, I want you to be able to say, we are who we say we are. Whenever you have these great big brand and mission statements, and they sound great, but so many companies really fail to live up to the expectation of actually living that out. And so that's what I want you to be able to walk away from here, not to say that we are who we say we are, but to be able to have the things and to be able to have the ideas and the topics in place to say, we know who we want to be, and we're going to work to get there. So, Essence, it looks like the first poll has ended, and that first question was, do you currently utilize staffing agencies to manage the majority of your hourly requirements? 75% of the crowd said no, 13% yes, and 13% not the majority, but some. So I know we have a smaller crowd here today, but this will be recorded and will be going out, I believe, to everybody that registered. So thank you all for chiming in, and please chime in throughout. I'm going to try to have the chat open, so if you have questions, feel free to stop me. I have found that these webinars can be very much a talking to, and I don't want it to be that way. So if you have questions, feel free, just like if we were in person, to raise your hand. The nice thing is here, you don't have to be so patient. You can just type your question into the chat and provide feedback. Tell me what your company does. The other thing about these types of scenarios is I think that whenever we have this chat function, a lot of people jump on because they want to hear what other people are doing, and they want to hear how things work at their office, and they want to hear that it's not that whatever I'm doing is not as bad as I think it is, because I think we often put ourselves in a position to say, hey, we think that we're doing a lot worse than we really are. So feel free to share opinions and thoughts in the chat. So thank you, William, for pointing that out. Like I said, we have a small group today. A couple of ones in there equate to that 13%. So moving on, Essence, if you want to slide to the second slide. So I don't know the makeup today, but big and small companies often get lost in their systems. We're always looking for the best or the fastest method of getting work done. We often lose track of how that looks to really our most valuable commodity, which is our employees. A lot of companies will say, well, what we produce is actually the most valuable thing. And my defense to that would say, without your employees, what you produce doesn't exist. And I think it's really important that we treat our employees with the utmost respect, and we treat them well, so that way that widget that they're creating, or the widget that they're moving, or the people that they're talking to, if you're in the service-based industry, is that they believe in it, that they love what they do, that they own it, that they believe in the mission and the vision of the organization. And so when we consider our employer brand, we have to look at our entire process. And that starts with awareness. So how does someone first become aware of your organization, of your job opportunities, all the way to the exit interview on the back end? A lot of companies that I work with, they get frustrated when people leave. And while it's not ideal that people leave, it also offers an extraordinary opportunity to find out why people choose to leave. So that way you can self-reflect as an organization and make changes along the way. But our retention efforts have to begin the moment a candidate arrives on our website. How we engage with people should be the same expectation that our company treats its clients and potential clients. A lot of companies spend a lot of money in sales and marketing. And to be honest, those same efforts that we treat our clients with are the same efforts that we can translate over to treat our prospective employees and our current employees. I know a couple of you mentioned using a staffing agency. The majority of you said that you use them to some degree. If you're using a staffing company, especially on the temp to hire side, you are effectively handing over the entire candidate experience to that staffing company. So when we think about awareness, we think about the interview process. That's the first half of how they come to know who you are. And unfortunately, staffing companies are an intermediary between the candidates and your company. And so being the intermediary, they have to take care of, they're trying to take care of the client, and they're trying to take care of the candidate. And what sometimes can get lost in that is whose best interest is at stake. And I say this not to bash on staffing companies, but to let you know as a client that if you are working with staffing companies, you need to have a say in that process. And I know a lot of companies that do work with staffing companies will use 2, 3, 4 of those agencies. And what happens is it becomes a lot of misinformation about what jobs are and what they are not. There becomes a lot of confusion about who I work for, where I work at. I know it seems simple to us on the client side, but on the candidate side, it is really confusing to work through an agency. And so if it's not very clear what the process is, then candidates instantly, they check out, right? They're not bought into that process. So, and you can't necessarily control as a client what that candidate experience is like on the front end unless you're heavily invested. So I'm not here to say don't use staffing companies, but what I am here to say is that if you are using them, invest in them. They're a service provider, but they're only as good as the partner that you are to them as well. So my company at Endeavous, we don't do a lot of the temp to hire work. We do contract staffing. So we're doing professional level staffing where we're inserting an employee because they have interim, et cetera. We do direct placement and we do recruitment outsourcing. So we don't necessarily delve into that temp to hire space much. So I don't want you to feel like I'm here saying, hey, you need to work with a staffing company, because that's definitely not what I'm here to say. But I do want you to understand that there are some intricacies to working with a third-party firm, and that there's different third-party firms out there as well. So just be mindful of that as well. And finally, if you're using a temp to hire firm, you have to remember that there aren't many people that are going to leave a full-time opportunity that they're in for a temporary opportunity for a full-time position, right? And if you expect, if your expectations are that staffing company can fulfill those requests 100% of the time or even 50% of the time, you're probably going to be disappointed. So this is kind of a real talk moment for me to have with all of you, that if you're using staffing companies, yeah, you may be frustrated with them. They have a bad rap, but some of that bad rap also comes from the client side as well, in the way that we view what the expectation should be there. Because if you think about yourself, if you have a full-time job opportunity today, would you be willing to take a temporary opportunity, even if it paid you a third or 50% more, with the hope that in 3 months or 6 months that you'd be handed a full-time opportunity? A lot of people aren't willing to risk that if they're supporting a family, if they're supporting even themselves, right? And so be cognizant of that. But we're going to explore that topic today as well, which is how you're supporting your TA team in retention to maximize to its potential. So, Are there any questions so far? If so, please don't hesitate to throw those into the chat. It looks like nothing is showing up just yet. Again, feel free to throw those in there as you have them. Essence, you can move to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, this process is a broad process. When we think about the idea that from attraction to exit, we have to manage that experience. We're managing that entire process. And candidate experience is something that most organizations are getting better at today, but they're still not where they need to be. In fact, before we move into the real meat of things, I'm going to give you a few statistics around candidate experience. So, number one, 73% of people say the job hunting process is one of the most stressful things in life. So 3 out of the 4 people absolutely hate the process in itself, right? It's like buying a car. You really hate the idea of it because you have to deal with people and you don't know who's telling you the truth. You don't know what's right. You don't know, you're making a decision that's based upon emotions, and to some degree you're making a decision based upon facts, but a lot of it comes down to how something makes me feel. And the job process, being as stressful as it is a challenging one. Think about any time that you've ever been looking for a job and what that looks like. 47% only 47% of candidates say employers do a good job of setting expectations in terms of communication at the beginning of the hiring interaction. So what that means is that only 47%, less than half of the candidates, think that companies do a good job of setting expectations up front about what's going to happen in the interview process. 81%, and it probably is low, especially now that we have COVID numbers, probably could be thrown into this. 81% of candidates say receiving updates on application status throughout the process would improve the overall candidate experience. So merely providing feedback on where they're at, what they're doing, what you're doing with their application, and what's up next. 45% of candidates agree that they can tell what a company will be like based off of their career site. 45% of candidates, which means that almost half of the candidates say that by looking at your career site, they can tell whether or not it's a company they want to work for. So it's potential that if you have a bad career site, you're potentially alienating half of the candidates that come to your site because they see that and they're like, never mind, I don't want any part of working for an organization that this is the process. And finally, 89% list the company's career site as an important tool in obtaining key information. So a lot of numbers there that talk to the importance of candidate experience, and more often than not, those conversations aren't taking place when it comes to how we're thinking about hiring. Any questions on those, throw them in the chat. Moving to the next slide, Essence. So now moving into the reality of how we attract candidates and what we're doing to attract employees. Like I said before in the introduction, is really it should not be any different than the customer attraction process, because companies invest millions of dollars, thousands of dollars, depending on the size, to acquire customers. CEOs, you often hear them say that their people are their most valuable asset, but we don't treat that process around retention and acquisition the same way that we treat customer acquisition and retention. And as somebody that has a sales and marketing background myself, that speaks to a lot of HR people, they often tell me, sales and marketing scares me to death. I don't like the process. I don't like what it's all about. But it's psychological. It's a mindset shift that we have to put ourselves in the idea that you may not be necessarily in sales, but you should always be selling your organization. You should be thinking about how to create an organization that is a top place to work, right? And that's what we can control in HR. Because if we're having those conversations ourselves with leadership and we're saying, this is what it takes to be a top place to work, are we committed to it? This is how we get there. We can't allow, from an HR perspective or an operations perspective, to be so focused on either the legality of HR or on the other side of being operational. We can't allow the process of creating our widget to become number one. Because at the end of the day, without the people that you have, your widget's going to be subpar and people aren't going to want to work for you. And those two things mean that you're not going to have a company that people want to come engage in. If you're part of a larger organization, you need to make sure that you're asking questions of corporate. Don't let them off the hook. Make sure that you're pushing them, that you're pushing them for more information, and that you are asking them for things that you need. And if you're not getting it, continue to ask. Don't feel like you're being that you're being too much, because if you truly believe in what you're doing, then what's most important is how you see your organization. And that often means that you're pushing for more. In fact, the reason why I say you need to ask questions in corporate is 75% of employees say their employers don't promote their employer brand on social media. So what they're saying is companies do a great job of promoting their brand for selling whatever their service or product is, but they don't do much to talk about what it's like to work there. And to be honest, I tend to lean towards companies that tell more of the whole story, right? Your product's great, but if people hate working there, I probably am not going to trust the product. So if you can tell a good story about why people like working there, if you can give me an insider look, which is what social media is meant to be, whether it's Instagram, whether it's stories on LinkedIn now, like give me an inside look. Make it feel like I know who you are. That comes back to the whole title of today's subject is, are you who you say you are? Because if you are, you'd be willing to share, you'd be willing to pull back that curtain and show people who you are. So, and then almost 33% of employers encourage their employees to use social media, which, in my opinion, that limits the chances of potential recruits seeing information about the company. Craziest thing the other day. Yesterday on LinkedIn, I saw a VP of HR. I saw a VP of HR who had been in her position since January and was just getting on LinkedIn to change her. She just updated LinkedIn to say that she's been working there. It's been 11 months. This is a VP of HR. LinkedIn is the first place people go to learn about your organization. They go to Google, and guess what? LinkedIn comes up immediately. So it's so important that you keep your brand fresh and up to date. William, I see your comment about Glassdoor. If you have more information there if you have a question, throw that in there. Trying to keep it. You want to talk about it? Okay.
No, I'm just trying to work with you a little on this, Chris. We use Glassdoor a little bit, and I always try to bring up during our interview process, our Glassdoor specifically, and point folks to it, because it is, their whole messaging there is to be transparent and forthright with, there's like anonymous reviews and stuff there.
Yeah.
So what's your experience with Glassdoor? Do you think it's a good thing, bad thing, medium thing?
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So if you want to talk transparency, I think it's a great tool because, to your point, it is anonymous, which is both. I would say that there are some challenges to anonymous reviews because I think that from a management side, anonymous reviews are tough because there's two sides to every story, and obviously, if there's a difficult, I think if you have a trend of people saying good things about your company, I'll leave it at that. If you have a trend of people saying good things about your company, then that is what the reality is. So one negative review here and there is not going to be wrong. A new HR. Yes, William, great. Own the negatives. And that's a big part of buy-in. And I don't know what your title is, William, but whether you're HR or you're in operations leadership, you can't shy away from those comments on, it's Glassdoor, it's Facebook, it's Google reviews. People can leave comments wherever they want. And so you have to lean into that, and you have to be willing to talk about it. I think people realize that not every company is going to be perfect. We're all people. None of us are perfect, and no system is perfect. So there's always going to be challenges. And then let's see. So a new HR director at a manufacturing company is struggling to overcome a former leadership team that led to bad reviews. Number one, I would say that she or he, that HR director, needs to get with if they have internal marketing, if they have external marketing, there needs to be money spent or time spent working with somebody in marketing to, if that HR director wants to buy into it themselves and they want to rebuild the brand, you have to have a communication strategy. You have to attack it head on. Like William says, you have to own the negative. So number one, if you have a new leadership team in place, those bad reviews are there, but what you have to do is you have to reposition things. We just came out of an election season. If we haven't figured out how to reposition how people see and view things, then none of us are paying attention to the election, because that's all politicians do. They spin and they have you retarget a different issue. And I'm not saying that companies need to be like that, but what I think that they need to do better is that they need to own the past, but present a vision for the future. And that's how you find your way around that. So if that means that you have to invest money in some videos that have people talking about what it's like and running those Facebook ads locally, if that means that you find a way to start working with local newspapers to tell stories about, the employer opportunities that you have in your organization, say the things that you're doing in the market from a nonprofit level. Like, you have to find ways to engage with the employees that you have. So hopefully Beth or Essence, I don't know which of you mentioned that, but I think negative reviews are your greatest opportunity to change the narrative, because you can show that you own it, and then you can turn that into a positive. Thank you for those messages. So at this time, Essence, would you mind sharing the next poll question? And while they're doing that, I'm going to read off one last statistic on this slide. So as you're answering that, 84% of employers would consider quitting the job that they have to take an offer with a company with a great reputation, sight unseen. So merely knowing that a company is good is enough for them to consider leaving the opportunity that they're in, that they may like, just because they know that it means that it's a great place to work. So those votes should be coming in. We've got a small group, so hopefully we can get the results in there pretty quickly on that. While we're waiting for those results, Essence, do you mind moving to the next slide?
Sorry about that.
Perfect.
All right,
are we close to
being able to we're ending the poll?
Thank you. Okay, so even with 14 participants or so on today's call actively participating, those numbers are pretty split. Dan, if that's the case, I would say that the problem then is that if we've got too many cooks in the kitchen, because somebody has to own that. If everyone thinks that they own it, you have no true leader in place. You've got to have somebody that is driving the overall message home. So if you don't mind chiming in, I don't know if that's your experience where you're at, Dan, or your thoughts. If you have something to counter my thoughts on that, would you mind chiming in?
Yeah, as soon as I can make sure I find my mute button. So I work for Bridgestone, and it's a big company, of course. So yep, we have aspects of that process that are managed at multiple different levels. Like we have a corporate talent acquisition group.
Yep.
of course. And then, of course, locally, you're trying to manage as much as you can and drive the activity locally to make sure you're feeding your recruitment activity. And of course, for me, and I'm a technical guy in a technical field, but I end up spending a lot of time with HR basically on the recruiting process because we've always managed that ourselves locally as much as we can. But we're getting a lot of help, of course. So to me, when you're looking for technical talent, it's very difficult to hand the technical aspect of that off and expect good results, technically speaking, to anybody outside of that technical field. So we've always been involved in all that. So it is what it is on some level when you're dealing with a large organization and everybody has their own niche that they need to manage, but it makes it difficult when you're trying to be flexible and mobile and get to the candidates and get them in. And that's really where we're struggling right now, is getting more people into our process so that we can do the evaluation. So that's where we're at. So we got a lot. You're right. We got a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Yes.
Sure. So Dan, which one did you answer then on this one?
I don't remember. I think
Okay.
I think I probably said HR because they have a lot of that, a lot of influence locally, but still we've got the TA group helping us out, and then of course we're trying to help as much as we can from the engineering side. So
sure, it's this recruitment process is unique, and on this call it sounds like if we have Bridgestone representatives and we have other representatives from maybe even smaller organizations here, you can see the disparity between how these things can be managed. And so we work with organizations as large as a Bridgestone, for example, and we work with small businesses as well. And when we're talking to those organizations, it's really when we think about who manages it, it's how are the processes built to enable flow. And I think if you look at it from that perspective, we have to ask ourselves: are there places where we can simplify the process? Are there places where we can eliminate bottlenecks? And what challenge that I see often, Dan, is especially in larger organizations, is something comes from the top and that says this is the process. The problem is that there isn't a regular revisit. You're not regularly revisiting that process to say this is where things could be improved, and that's unfortunate. And I think, working in, when we think about like Kaizen and continual improvement and continuous improvement, we're really good oftentimes on the product side and the creation side, the manufacturing, et cetera. We're really bad at evaluating our people processes, right? Which is how we work together to navigate challenges in the workflow. And you're right, on the technical side, a lot of companies, because they can scale high volume recruitment, but on the technical side, it gets really challenging because there's only a certain amount of screening that they can do before they move people on. And I think that from a legal perspective, you also have to have things built into the process to make sure that you aren't showing bias, that you are making sure that from a diversity perspective that you're being open to that. It's unfortunate, but we all have inherent bias in our process. So, we tend to hire and work and be friends with people that look and act a lot like ourselves, which is oftentimes a challenge as well when we think about who we're trying to hire. So, Dan, you're right. The larger the organization, you probably are going to have more cooks in the kitchen. And I think it's just really important that if in your position, to be having those conversations to say, hey, how can we improve this process to make it, to simplify it for this? Maybe it's running a pilot in your division, right, or your organization to say, this is what we think the best practice is, and then being able to present that back. Big organizations love continuous improvement. They love to be able to talk about, hey, we did this and we're showing this now. So good stuff there, Dan. I appreciate that. So search to offer experience. This is a big one for me. So if you live in Nashville there's a good chance that at some point you have been to a Preds game, a Titans game, or you've been to the University of Tennessee to go to a Vols game. I used to work in college athletics, and we were a sports marketing consulting firm, and so we worked with big athletic brands to improve how fans interacted with the game day experience. And it was really cool because, and what I love about this analogy is that there's a lot of crossover here. So what we would do is we would analyze our data about where people buy tickets from. So take Nashville, for example. The vast majority of season ticket holders for Nashville professional sports resides in Williamson County, with some sprinkling of Rutherford and Wilson and Robertson, et cetera, on the outliers. So what we would do is we would do a hotspot map to understand where people are coming from, and we would take the CEO, the president, the general manager, and we would go there. We would say, what's it like to drive to an average suburban neighborhood here, and on a Tuesday night, go to one of our athletic events, go to a Preds game? What's it like to go park? What's it like to buy a ticket to that event? What's it like to go sit in a regular seat? And what is that experience like? How bad do those seats suck to sit in, right? Because when we're in leadership positions, we get jaded with the fact that it's a different viewpoint for us. And you look at sports and you think about, you watch an NFL game and you see the owner sitting up in their suite, right? And you think, how do they know what that experience is like for their fans that are in the third deck? And how do you create that better experience for them? Because that's where you build a long-term fandom. And so when I think about the search to offer experience, we need to do the same thing. Our user experience has to be credible. It has to be something that candidates can easily navigate. So everything that you see right now on the screen is something that you need to be asking. Is our career site usable? Is it easily findable? Can you find it when you come to our website? Can you find it when you Google jobs near me? Do we look desirable? Is it accessible to all? Is it a valuable aspect to our overall brand, and are we credible? So the number one thing that you can do when you take away from here is, if you wonder why you're not getting enough candidates, open an incognito browser on Google Chrome, or open up private browsing, I think is on Safari, and type in jobs near me. What happens is your computer understands, your phones and your computers, they capture information about you. They know where you are, they know where you are, they know how often you are in certain places, and they use that information to provide search information to you that they think is most relevant to you. So I search a lot of marketing and sales stuff. So if I hit jobs near me, my computer knows that Google is going to try to send me marketing and sales information first and foremost. So that's why it's important to start those searches, because when you think about, if you're in a high volume, if you work in manufacturing, supply chain especially, the people that are applying and coming to work for you, for the most part, unless you're a brand like Bridgestone or Nissan, they don't know who an NHK Seating is. They don't really know that Hot Topic has a distribution warehouse. They think of Hot Topic as being a store in the mall, right? So they're just going to go to Google and they're going to search jobs near me. Maybe they search manufacturing jobs near me. Maybe they search forklift jobs near me. Understand what people are searching for and how quickly you come up. Number one, Indeed is going to be on the entire first page, most likely. Indeed, ZipRecruiter, et cetera. So how do you find your way to the top of that page? Instead of spending money on Indeed, maybe you ask your organization, hey, can we run Google ads? So that way we can capture people whenever they're doing forklift jobs in and around the Smyrna area. That way they're getting people drawn to our career site rather than going to Indeed and we're looking at all of our competition. If you're spending money on Indeed, know that everybody else is spending money on Indeed. You're all putting money into the same pot to compete against one another. So the more money that you put in, the more money somebody else is going to throw in to compete against you. So it's like reverse collusion for you as a local employer. So be thinking of that, be cognizant of that. Apply on your website with a qualified resume. Examine, yep, it is a monopoly, William. It most definitely is. And it's unfortunate that that's what we've come to with the job search experience, but nobody has anything to say about it. Apply on your website with a qualified resume and figure out how long it takes for somebody to connect with you. How long does it take for a recruiter to send you a message? How long does it take for them to call you? Calculate that and then provide that feedback and understand, ask why. Why does it take 3 days for somebody to call me if I submitted a resume that for all intents and purposes matches every qualification standard that we're looking for, right? Because do some secret shopping, think about that experience and what makes it good or bad. Because if you don't have those answers, you're not going to improve the experience without reviewing it from that end. And then examine the communication. How am I being treated as a candidate, whether I'm being accepted to move on or whether I'm being told, hey, your resume is not a fit. Essence, can you move to the next slide? So you get hired, and I know we're moving pretty fast here. We've only got 15 minutes left, but onboarding and is really important. So if you want to move on to the next slide here for me. So here, this is one of my favorite slides in this whole deck, because 52% of employers say receiving organized, relevant, well-timed content is the most important aspect of the onboarding process. And most of us here have been hired by somebody, and it's happened to me before. You get hired for a job, and you go through of the last 30 or 60 days where people have been engaging with you wholeheartedly and consistently, and they're saying, hey, we want you to work for us. Boom, offer letter comes, you sign it, and you send it back in, and it's like, okay, you're going to start in 3 weeks. Then you don't hear anything for 3 weeks. And next thing you're thinking, man, do I still have a job? Maybe I should start looking for other opportunities. And doubt starts to creep in, and you have no idea because, again, we're people, and we have stupid emotions that make us think that we're not good enough or something changed or something happened, and we don't know what's coming up next. So it's really important in the onboarding and what we call the dead period to make sure that you create opportunities to wow this person as they come on board, because you've spent all this time selling them on the idea of coming to work for you. But it's like when you order something online after reading all about how great it is, and you get it and you open it up and it's broken, and you're like, well, that sucks, or it's not what you thought it was going to be. And I think employees often feel that same way sometimes whenever they go through the process of trying to get the job and they think it's great. Then they get the job and zilch and nothing. They're not hearing from anyone anymore. So make sure that you do something there like a welcome kit, provide some consistent communication, some outreaches in between time, and then make sure that they're prepared for first day. Make sure that they have the tools that they need to come to their first day and not be nervous. Because think about if you went home and if you have kids, if you told your kids that they were going to have to go to a different school, they would instantly be distraught likely. They'd be like, I don't know those teachers. I don't know those kids. I don't know what it's going to be like. Honestly, adults are no different when they change jobs. So many people are scared to death to change jobs because of the fear of the unknown is greater than the fear of the known. So they might be in a bad situation, but the fear of switching jobs and thinking that it could be worse to keep them from making a move. It could also keep them from actually coming to work that first day, right? Like they could ghost. I know that's a huge problem in the industry right now. So what are you doing to make sure that person doesn't do that to you? Next slide, Essence. So here's some examples of some things that you can do in week one. So once people get in the door with you, have a face-to-face greeting. Have somebody that makes sure that they meet them when they walk in the door and greets them, whether it's the operations leader, maybe you're hiring a group of 10 people at a time. I mean, if you're doing higher volume hiring, I think it's really important that you try to group those people together so that they feel a sense of community. Even if it's a group of 5, that's more valuable than bringing somebody that's one-off into a group to get them started. So think about that. Make sure that you have a really good process on day 1 and week 1. So what we started doing at Endeavous, we used to have people start on Monday morning, which is such a dumb time for us to have people start because we're all in meetings and we're putting out fires from the weekend and everybody is just a little bit on edge that day. And there is no way possible that you can create a good experience when people feel that, you know, they've got more important things to do than this new employee. So we started having people come in at 9 o'clock on Tuesday mornings to start, for example. Instead of Monday mornings at 8 o'clock, it's Tuesday mornings at 9. That even gives us time on Tuesday morning to make sure that if anything came up, like we can push it out of the way and we can make sure that we're ready to go for when this person shows up at 9 o'clock, that they're ready, that we're ready, that they're ready, and we can create a great experience for them. Make sure that they feel like they're part of the team. Take them out to celebratory lunches, have celebratory lunches brought in. That's obviously a comment for non-COVID times, but hopefully we'll be able to do those types of things again, but establish expectations. Have leadership post about it on LinkedIn, for example, like share pictures, share comments. That doesn't work obviously for everyone that's in maybe higher volume, lower skill jobs, but make it a team picture. Yes, gift cards work great. Give them an Uber Eats card. That way they can order food to be brought to their house. Make people think about how you would like to be treated and start treating people that way. Because if you do that, you're probably going to increase your employee engagement, your candidate experience all the way around. Think about all the bad experiences you've had and write them down and put them into motion and ask yourself, what do we do well here and what could we do better? Move to the next slide, Essence. And if you want, I believe the next poll question, why don't you go ahead and throw that next poll question up? We talked about a lot of this already. So if you don't mind asking or answering this poll question for us. So do you collaborate with the marketing department to assist with graphics for social media or proactive outreach campaigns such as email marketing? And we'll give you about 15 seconds. If anybody has any questions, throw those in. I know we've only got 9 minutes left, but we've gotten through quite a bit of our topics here today that I think you all can take with you. And I want to remind you all that I'm more than happy to have individual conversations with you to review these processes and things after our day-to-day.
All right, last answers.
Yes, that is fantastic. That is good news. I like seeing that because a lot of companies, and I think this is probably abnormally high, to be honest, from the conversations that I have, although it is getting better. Last year, on a list of the top 10 most in-demand skills that HR needs in the next decade, social media and marketing were both in the top 3. So keep that in mind, that this is only going to become more important as we have a race for labor and a tightening labor market and finding people with the right skills. You've got to find a way to stand out, because whether you build a nut for a tire for Nissan, or you build, or you're building the seat for GM in Spring Hill, that's not what people are coming to work for you for. If you do IT services, there's a bunch of IT services firms out there. So what makes people want to come work for you more? What is truly the differentiators that you have? And then use that conversation with the marketing department to tell your story. Be a storyteller. The next 85 days, the first 90 days, a lot of high volume positions have a ton of turnover in the first 90 days, y'all. And a lot of that just comes because they get started and nobody invests in them. Nobody, we put the cult and culture. Nice. I like it. There's a lot of, I don't even know what you're on this one for if you guys got that's going for you, William. So you might need to be telling this story better than I can. The first 90 days is really important. And the reason that so much turnover occurs there is because people have doubts. They feel like maybe they're not doing the job good. they are unsure of themselves. And so that's where some positive reinforcement comes into play. And I know that sounds, I'm a millennial, and it sounds like, you know, this generation's soft, you know, Gen Z and millennials, they're soft, but in reality, baby boomers and Gen Xers raised us, so you made us soft. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about how people act in the workplace. If you're mad about participation trophies, know that that was created for people that grew up in that. They didn't make participation trophies for themselves. So be cognizant of the fact that this is how these people were trained. This is how their brains develop. That they need feedback. They need to know that what they're doing is right if you want them to buy into the culture. So let's move to the next slide, Essence. Continuing, some different things that you can do in months 4 through 12. NPS surveys, I'm a big fan of those. Just some quick, hey, would you recommend working here to friends and family? If you don't know what NPS surveys are, write them down, go Google them, read about them. It's a quick thing that you can implement. It's pretty easy to implement. There's a ton of different ways that you can do it. There's a lot of companies out there that do it very affordably and cheap, and they're all really good. Establish weekly one-on-ones. Make sure that if you're in a big manufacturing facility or if you're in a healthcare facility, it's a lot like government. I'm a big believer that the closer you are to where you live, that's the government that matters the most. And the same way goes for leadership. So the closer you are to the employees, the closer the leader is to the employees, that's where the real impact is made. So if you have a team leader with a bad attitude that manages 15 or 20 people, maybe the conversation needs to be with the team leader, not with why can't we keep employees? Because we tend to be reactive to that problem rather than proactive. So maybe the team leader is the problem, not the employees. So be cognizant of that. Not every high performer is a good leader. You need to have somebody that is supportive of other people. Provide consistent feedback, and again, ensure comfort, make sure people feel welcome. Next slide, Essence. So there's a lot of different things that you can do from a benefits perspective. I think discount programs are great. There's a lot of companies out there, the Verizons of the world. You don't have to be, yes, people leave people, not companies. That's your favorite quote, I feel like, Beth. I even know that you put that in there. Travel assistance, education programs. Look, young people today are shouldered with a ton of financial debt because they went to school. So if you're hiring corporate positions, instead of maybe only having a 401k, maybe you have a loan payback model as well. There's a lot of companies out there that will help you manage that. And I think that's a great differentiator in the market. The discount programs, uniform partners, find ways to add perks. People expect healthcare benefits. People expect retirement benefits. So what are you doing on top of those, what are now regular benefits, to add more value? So ask that question. What else can we add to our employer benefits packages? Next slide, Essence. So if you want to buy a good book, buy this one. If you want to start thinking about how to think about your workplace culture, how to be a leader, how to do a better job of celebrating, and how to create metrics that reward truly best practices in productivity, check out People Over Profit by Dale Partridge. It's a really readable book, very similar to, like if you've ever read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, which is a huge best-selling business book. If you haven't read that one, do read that one too. Big fan of People Over Profit. Great guy. I think he would, if he's somebody that would fit in very well in Middle Tennessee culturally. So give that a shot. And then finally, last slide, no matter what your role is in an organization, you've got to figure out what your why is personally and why that applies to the employees that you're around and who you're leading. You've got to learn how to be a storyteller. You've got to be able to learn how to tell your story and not be afraid to. A lot of people are afraid of opening up and talking to people, and that's what people are drawn to, is people that they can relate to. And if you have a story that people can relate to, they're going to buy into that. That's both from a personal and a corporate level. Understand your why and sell it. So we're at time. I know I had to go through those last few slides fairly quickly, but there's a lot of content today that we covered. But a lot of it is really just reflection and thinking about your processes today. So are there any questions that anybody hasn't added in the chat? Anything that we didn't get to that you have questions about? Because I've got some time here before a bunch of dudes come into this house ready to change clothes to go to a wedding. So
Chris, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. Thanks for all of you who participated. We will be recording this and we'll share that back out with everyone. And Chris, can we share your slides as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I sent the PDF version over to Essence, so she has that already, so she can send it out.
We'll be sharing that with everyone. You can please pass that on to other folks within your company who are decision makers on the hiring process or the marketing process. And with that, we'll say goodbye and we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Great.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Essence.
Thank you, everyone. And feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn if you need anything. If you need my contact information, get with Beth. They can put you in contact with me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.